All right, it is time for TBR announcement video. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be my chatty video about how I plan on doing my TBRs in 2022. I came up with this idea during the Currently Reading Challenge, and when I mentioned it in a couple of the videos and asked if people would be interested in seeing the idea, and I got some yeses, so here we are. And so this actually isn't going to be me picking my TBR for the year or to start the year. This is about the idea behind why I came to this idea and what it actually is. Let's start with what it actually is, and then we'll get to why I got there. No, do we want to start that way? No, it needs a little explanation. So we're going to do a little explanation as to how we got there. When I was doing my Currently Reading Challenge, one of the big things that I noticed in terms of differences between the books that were stuck on my Currently Reading versus the books that I actually finished, and anytime I say books, just imagine I'm saying titles because I read a lot of things that aren't books, but it's just after so many years of saying books, it's what happens. So what is different between the titles on my Currently Reading versus the titles that I actually finish? One huge difference between those two things is that the titles on my Currently Reading at the start of the Fall Reading Challenge was the average page count was 400 pages. Up until that point in the year, the average page count for a title that I had finished was 160 pages. So 400 pages, 160 pages. You can put 160 pages 2.5 times into 400. It's a huge page count difference. Now, I'm not against reading long books. I don't get scared about reading long books, but apparently I start a lot of long books and I don't finish them. Looking into that a little bit further, I looked into how long it takes me to read a longer book versus a shorter work. And I didn't use 400 because I felt like, generally speaking, I don't tend to read a lot of 400-page books because obviously they sit on my Currently Reading. So I don't remember how I came up with the number, but at some point I thought, hey, what about 300 pages? How do I feel about 300 pages? 300 pages feels non-intimidating to me. I don't hesitate about picking up a book that's 300 pages or less. So 300 pages it was. So I looked at my stats and I looked how long did it take me to finish a work that was 300 pages or more versus 300 pages or less. I was actually pretty on target here because it's not intimidating too much to read a 300 page or less book because generally speaking, I tend to finish 300 pages or less works in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's actually pretty swift. So I was happy about that. Then I looked at how long it takes me to read a work that's 300 pages or more. And this can be like 302 pages or 600 pages or 800 pages, anything over 300 pages. It's taken me this year 2.5 months. So 2 weeks, 2.5 months. That's actually reversed. 2.5 months, 2 weeks. Is that the same amount of time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually exactly the same as 400 and 160. Maybe that shouldn't be a surprise. Anyway, so I have decided, just making an executive decision in my own reading life, which of course I can do. So I have decided that next year I am going to be focusing on reading titles that are 300 pages or less. So what I am going to do is because I want to finish things. I want to get back in the habit of reading books for projects and challenges, reading books that are on my list, that are part of my goals, and not only starting them, but also starting and finishing them. I want to get a bit more swift. Now, I don't want to speed read or feel pressured that I have to finish things, but I want to get back in the regular habit of starting and finishing works I want to read. Like, this shouldn't be strange, but I end up starting a lot of things that I don't finish, and I also end up starting a lot of things that aren't for any projects or goals. I just started them because who knows why? I don't know, because it was next in series is often a big one, or the library hold came in, which, that you got to work with that, or someone mentioned it, or whatever. I want to get back to what are the books that are on the projects and challenges and list that I am working through, and I want to start them and I want to finish them. Just assembly line, But again, I don't want to do it without enjoying the work or, it being meaningful or any of those kinds of things. I want to get back in the regular habit of having starts and finishes. It's weird because it's like when I say it, it sounds so simple. but yet sometimes we have to come back to the simple to make things work. So anyway, so how I'm actually going to do this a bit more like logistically is I'm going to take all of the projects and challenges and goals lists that I'm working through, and I'll share what they are here. So I have my Shannon Reads Those Books exploration, which is a lot of classics and zeitgeist and modern classic works. I have my sci-fi, fantasy, and weird exploration, which is science fiction, fantasy, and weird titles. I have the oldest books on my Goodreads TBR, which each year I expand by a year. So for 2022, I will include anything up to and including that was added to the end of 2012. So there'll be some new titles added to that list. I have a list from Bustle magazine called the 25 Essential Reads from the Past 50 Years. It used to also have that every woman should read, but it doesn't have that part at the end anymore. It's in the URL, but not in the title. I don't know. I'll link these all below. I also want to read the Vaginal Fantasy Book Club picks that I haven't read up until the end of their live shows, which was April 2018. I can't believe that was 3 years ago now. It is a romance. It was a romance book club hosted by Felicia Day, Bonnie Burton, Veronica, and Kyla. I also want to read all of the BookTube SFF Awards shortlisted works and winners that I haven't read. I also am working my way through the Oprah Magazine 44 of the best books by Black authors you should read. And then the one that planted the seed for this idea was the Broaden Your Reading Horizons the Quick Way list that I found, I think, on Listopia. I will link it down below. And it's all like books that are often on lists, but generally speaking, those books tend to be sort of 200 pages, 250 pages. And I'm like, that's a really good idea, and because I'm also going to include any owned unread books that are books that fall into the bigger umbrella categories of like, I always want to read memoirs, nonfiction art books, productivity works, sociopolitical awareness works, and there's a couple of authors that I, in particular, am working my way through their bibliography. I was going to say discography. That's a different medium. So I'm going to take all of those lists. I know that's a lot. So that's like 8 lists plus my owned unread books. I had a thought there and I strayed from it. And I can't remember what it is now. When I was talking about the Broaden Your Reading Horizons the Quick Way, it's gone. I just have to move on. So what I've done is I've taken all of the titles from all of those lists and I have separated them out to the books that are under 300 pages versus over 300 pages. There will be a couple of exceptions for like if a book is over 300 pages, but there's lots of illustrations and it feels like it would take the same amount of time as a 200-page book, then, that's fair game. Same thing. If there's a 200-page classic that I know that's going to take me 6 months, no, it goes off. So there was a little negotiating there, but generally speaking, 300 or under are the titles I'm going to work with. 300 and over, we will save till later. This was the idea. One of the reasons why I initially hesitated from this idea because I didn't want to limit myself. And if I want to read a longer work, I can. I'm not saying I can't. It's just sort of giving me a smaller pool of titles to work with. And the thing is, I'm in it for the long run for reading. So I will get to the longer titles later. This is to help me get back in the habit of reading and finishing works and working on my reading comprehension and just working on being consistent, sometimes with more challenging works. But if it's a challenging work, but it's only 150 pages, that's probably a better first pick than a challenging work that's 800 pages. So I'm in it for the long run. So starting with the shorter titles doesn't mean I'll never get to the longer titles. It's like starting with a half marathon, if you want a sports analogy. I don't do marathons, but you know what I mean? It's starting with something that is more achievable, that still works towards my longer goal and will work that muscle. So that's the idea behind it. But of course, that still leaves me with lots and lots and lots of titles. What I am going to do from there is I am going to split things into 4 big bucket genres. I'm going to put nonfiction together because that's really sort of has a different pace. Generally, it depends. Not all nonfiction is the same. So I'm going to put nonfiction together. I'm going to put romance together. I'm going to put any kind of speculative fiction together. So science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, horror, anything speculative together. And then I will have one category for everything else fiction. So that'll be literary fiction, modern classics, contemporary fiction, realistic fiction, which is a term that is true. I'm going to start using it more because it does explain that. And honestly, I have a lot of that and I haven't finished a lot of that. So there's lots of choice there. So I'm going to do those four buckets: nonfiction, romance, speculative fiction, and then literary or realistic, or everything else, depending on how you look at it. And then I'm going to create TBR jars. Yes, this isn't one of them, this is for something else, but I'm going to create TBR jars, and that is how I'm going to do my TBR. I'm going to also try and start things off really, really easy. And so for the first little while of beginning of 2022, I plan on giving myself, I guess a season, like three months, not necessarily season, just season proper, but close enough, like January, February, March. And I'm going to do a TBR jar for each, and I'm going to handpick sort of 10 titles per the buckets. And I'm going to include for each of the buckets the shortest title, no matter what it is. So something really easy, the shortest title. I am going to pick one that I really want to read. So I'm going to hand pick one, and then the rest of the remaining 8 titles will be randomized. I am going to, just for this first glance, for this first pass, I am also not going to include any title that I have any hesitation about. No. Anything where I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure about that author, or I'm not sure, I've read something else by that author and I didn't enjoy it, or I'm not sure if that's going to be too challenging for me to get through, or I don't have access to that. I'm only including books that I own, that are on Scribd, or easily available at the library. So access has to be available. So, but anything where if I look at the title and go, I'm not sure, not this time. I will get there. For this first pass, I don't want any trepidation. I want to set myself up for success and be excited about getting to the titles each and every time that I get to the titles. So that is the plan. And I do plan on pre-filming my first picks. So I think did I mention this already? I've had to start and stop this so many times. So I am planning on pre-filming my first picks. So I will hopefully have a video in January for those first picks. The challenge is, as I don't know how often I will finish things, because theoretically speaking, if all goes well, these should all take about 2 weeks to read. Now, you have to stagger that a little bit, because I'm not going to start 4 books on the same day and finish them on the 14th day. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. I also don't tend to film in January or even part of February, so I will probably have to come up with something, whether that's posting on Instagram or coming up with a wrap-up in mid-February and saying, this is how things have gone so far, let's do the next picks. So I don't know how the videos are going to fly, if I'll do Friday reads and then weekly TBRs or whatever, because I do plan on reading other stuff next year. I do plan on continuing and finishing the works of Ibsen. I do plan on reading as many as the Goosebumps as are available. I'm getting really close to that. I can't remember off the top of my head any of my other goals. I do plan on continuing to buddy read with Izzy and Kate Kelly, and also with Anita. So, but what those titles will be, as long as we're all having fun buddy reading, those are separate buddy reads. But I plan on I have other reading plans, but this is going to be my base TBR creation, and I am going to have to keep my eye on the prize a little bit, which means that I'm going to have to be really careful about jumping into readathons and read-alongs, and because just my track record has been pretty low. So I can definitely, if I can do it where I finish the title by the end of the readathon, that's fine. So I think I am going to be, did I already say this, that I'm going to be that person that reads a graphic novel or reads a poem or whatever. And if I can participate in that way, great. If I can't participate in that way, then, not this year. So I'm going to see how it goes, at least for a season. So January through March is the initial idea, and then assess how things go. And do I want to keep doing this? Is it working? Do I need to make changes? those kinds of things. So that's the idea. I hope I covered all the bases. If I missed anything, I will leave it in the description box below. I will leave links down below to all of the lists that I mentioned, as well as if I've done a Goodreads shelf for them, because for several of them I have done a Goodreads shelf for them. And for the oldest books on my Goodreads TBR, that's actually a real want to read, which is my first of the 4 lists that they start, or the 3, because my actual want to read list is not what I want to read, because to add a title to a list, you have to say that either you read it, you're currently reading it, or you want to read it. And sometimes I want to add a title to my list that I have no intention to read. So I had created a new shelf called A Real Want to Read, which I've been using since 2010. Oh my gosh, I've been using Goodreads for so long. Anyway, so that is my idea. I really hope that it works. Let me know your thoughts on this. Is this something that you think I'm going to be successful at? Is this something that sounds fun to watch? Like, I think doing the TBR jar polls has been really fun and really successful in terms of the currently reading challenge. I always like watching when TBR jars. I've had some success with them in the past, but not a lot. Like, I originally did do TBR jars I think 4 years ago or something, and then I did the unwrappings. But I think the limiting by page count, I think, will really help in terms of finishing the work. And over time, I will, if I really like this method, I can increase that page count. And or if it's just perfect, maybe I won't. Maybe I will just only read books that are 300 pages and less. I don't know. I think it's a good place to start. And I think it will, as I said, build that skill of continuing to finish things, and then, read hopefully still a wide variety of titles, which is always one of my things, because my basic reading goals are increase my reading comprehension, broaden my reading horizons, enjoy what I read, and participate in social events, which is the one that I have to be a little more careful on. But and sometimes one title will hit all of those things, and sometimes it will hit just one, and sometimes it won't hit any. So, but again, I don't want to limit. I don't want to say I can't read anything. I think I just this is going to be my picks. This is what I'm going to get to first, along with buddy reading, and see how things go. So yeah, that is the idea. Let me know your thoughts. Would it be fun to watch that? But as I said, I think I'll do it January 1, and then I'll have to come back in February, because that tends to be my schedule for the new year. So there you go. I made it to the end of this video. Oh my gosh, I am so happy. And I'm so happy to share the idea. It has been something that I have been musing about for so long. So it's been exciting to get it out there. So yeah, there we go. That is my plans for 2022 in terms of how I create my TBRs. Fingers crossed it works. Thanks so much for watching.